Hey, good evening, guys. I'm Mark Morek, managing partner with Ciresi Morek. Today is October 7th, and we are doing something a little different tonight. We're going to shake things up from our normal YouTube Live where we go over resumes and things like that. We have a guest today. He's a fellow West Point grad, classmate and friend of mine, Rob Ells, is going to be joining us. And he's got a great military transition story. We're going to get into some information with him, but more on that to come. For those of you that don't know, I spent over 10 years active duty as a commissioned officer. I can speak firsthand of some of the challenges that come with transitioning out of the military. So that's what we're going to chat with Rob, and he can share a little bit more recent experience with us. He recently transitioned out. Well, not recently, about 5-6 years ago, transitioned out, was part of Roush and Quicken Loans military transition teams, did a lot of work with them, and so it should be a good conversation. He'll be joining us in a minute, but before then, want to jump into our new searches that we've got. We've been pretty busy, so right now we are looking for a general manager up in Grand Rapids for an automotive company, a maintenance manager up in Grand Rapids for an automotive company. We're looking for a director of quality, not an automotive company, actually. It's actually consumer products. And I'm sorry, that's up in Detroit. We are looking for a sales manager in the Akron area, a controller in Florence, South Carolina. Out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, we're looking for a general manager, an HR manager, and a manufacturing engineering manager. We are looking for a plant manager out of Joliet, Illinois. Props to the Blues Brothers, for those of you that don't remember that movie. We've got a process engineer in Detroit with some kind of automotive background. We've got a plant manager in Gainesville, Georgia. We've got a plant manager in Toledo, Ohio. We have a plant manager in Angola, Indiana. That's north of Fort Wayne. We've got a plant manager in wonderful sunny Aiken, South Carolina. We've got a maintenance manager out of Waverly, Georgia. A design engineer out of Akron. That's a software design engineer type role. We've got a technical sales manager, kind of a hunter, out of Canton, Ohio. And then we have a general manager, another general manager, automotive, out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. So those are the opportunities that we have from the last time we did this. I know there's a lot of uncertainty in the market that we see, but I got to tell you, we're pretty busy. I mean, there's a lot of activity right now within manufacturing. What I also want to do is congratulate a few folks. Ramona Roth as a director of HR for Dana. Zach Witt in a director of supply chain for Dayton Superior. Congratulations, Zach. Derek Simpson is a sales manager for Carlisle Brake and Friction. And then we've got Kimberly Lawrence, started as a plant controller for Dana. Jim Napke, he started as an ops manager for Dexter Axle. Eric Jarvis is a director of operations for Remington Products Company, hometown of Wadsworth. And then we've got Teresa Bardot, started as an assistant controller for Howmet Aerospace over in Youngstown. And then congratulations, Devon Ravel, for HR manager for Animatic down in Columbus. So as you can see, I mean, we've been busy. A lot of great things going on right now. As we get Ron here on, if we get Rob, I'm sorry, he's got a twin brother, Ron. That's why I keep calling. So Rob and Ron were the twins at the academy. So Ron, if you're watching, I apologize. Rob is going to be joining us. And while we're getting him here, there's a thing that Anna Maria is going to put up for us. Military-friendly employers. It's an easy place for folks to go, and they can see who are folks that support or want make it a little bit easier for military folks to transition on to their team. So I know Anna Maria is going to be putting that up here in a second. So, and then while we're getting Rob to join us here, I think he's going to be pulling in here in a second. So while he's coming up,
Yeah. There we go.
So Rob is a military. Currently, he is still with Roush. He's a military business development for their performance out of Michigan. He married his best friend from the day after graduating, Danica. They've been married for almost 28 years. They have 3 great children. Their daughter is a physical therapist. She married a 2017 grad. They're down in Fort Stewart, Georgia. Their oldest son, Jared, is a 2019 grad. He's going through, he's actually at Fort Rucker going through flight school to be a UH-60 driver. So he's having a great time. I know what that's like. And then their youngest son, Alec, is currently a junior in high school, but he is going to be, hopefully, class of 2026. So, great military career that he is fostering there with kind of that second generation of folks going in. And a little bit about Rob here as we're pulling him in. Are we going to get him on here in a second?
Yep.
So Rob enlisted out of high school in 1988, served as a mechanized infantryman. He was accepted into USMA, graduated with me in 93, served as an engineering officer for just over 22 years, and he retired in 2014. And then after retiring, he spent 16 months with Quicken Loans, helping to grow their veterans hiring program pretty much from the ground up. He's been with Roush for the last 5 years, and he spent the first 2 years as a manager for their Veterans Initiative program, and then transitioned to his current role as a director of military business development. So, and then on top of that, while he was with Quicken, he served as a board member for Hiring Our Heroes Veteran Hiring Summit at General Motors World Headquarters in Detroit. So, yeah, we're just seeing him.
You ready?
We are.
All right. Okay. Let's get Rob in there. We just need his video.
Hey, can you see me, Mark?
Hey, Rob. Not yet. We can't. I think last time when we did the test run, it took a second. Hey, there you are. Hey,
how about that? How about if I turn the video on? That helps. Technology is your friend when you use it, right?
Yes. Hey, that's okay. You are technically challenged like I am as well, so that's okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, very cool. Well, glad you. So listen, I just went through your intro and bio that you shared with me about Danica and the kids. Talked about what you've done from a transition perspective. Really appreciate. Called you Ron like 4 times throughout it, so I apologize. Okay. I'm sure that never happened in your life, right?
Never.
But I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us today and kind of just talking about transitioning military and some of the things there. So if you could kind of share with us biggest advice perspective with moving around within and getting into Roush, and then in general from a military to civilian perspective, your experience on that. I mean, your transition's a little bit newer than mine. I know with you retiring and getting out. So if you can kind of talk about that, that would be great. Would love to hear it.
Sure. And so, I mean, I'll start off with a little disclaimer, right? So I'm currently not in the role where I'm managing Roush's veterans program and not directly tied in with our HR or anything. More than willing to share all my opinions and thoughts based on a couple roles that I had. But we have some folks in place that are talking specifically to our hiring practices. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenge when you're doing that transition. And I think the longer you're in, the more challenging it can be. And I'd say a couple things, at least from our experience in the Army, right? They don't teach you to write resumes or to negotiate for your pay. It's go there, do this, and this is how much you're getting paid. So if you spend a good part of your life doing that, then you're not prepared for what's required on the outside. And those are probably two of the biggest buckets, I think, that are challenges as you make that transition. In terms of advice for folks that are transitioning out, I would say a couple things. One, find a mentor, and preferably one that's done this transition recently, because they're going to know the most current stuff that's going on.
Right.
And then that mentor could be an individual, or it could be a company like yours that kind of straddles. You have the professional experience of doing it, but also understand the veteran and military lifestyle. And then the second thing I would say is do research. You spend time in the military, you know good units and bad units, and they have a culture, right? So seek out those companies that you think will be a fit. And one good indicator for veterans is, do they have an active veteran hiring program? That in itself says something about the company. So certain states have great programs, and I'm sure there's a lot. Here in Michigan, it's the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, and they do a phenomenal job of connecting companies that want to hire veterans and then displaying that out there for the job seekers. So that'd be my two biggest bits of advice in general for folks transitioning out.
I think Ohio has a pretty strong one too.
Most definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
I've been involved with them a little bit. So
cool. Very cool. Yeah, and I can tell you too, we talked a little bit about this earlier with regards to resume writing. A big challenge I know can be translating what we've done into civilian speak. And I think there's two kind of sides of thought. And I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this. If I'm a military member transitioning out, do you want to see me translate what I've done in the military and then put it in more civilian speak, like a platoon sergeant being an ops manager? Or would you rather see me have platoon sergeant on there and then you know how to translate it? What do you think works better nowadays?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to who's your first conversation with. Is that company representative a veteran themselves, or are they not? Because then your advice is different. Personally, as a veteran, tell me what you did in the military. I'm working in this company. I can translate that in my head and then sell it internally. But if you come out and you have taken the class that says don't speak military, and so everything is so generic, I can't even tell what you did in the military. That makes it just as challenging, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's a different scenario if your first interaction is with a non-veteran. Then it's a totally different set. But personally, tell me what you did in the military. I'll help you connect the dots.
Right.
If I think there's a connection.
No, and I think that goes back to kind of the research you alluded to, and then knowing your audience, right? If I know I'm talking to you and you're in that military perspective, then I'm going to be more military than I am going to be if I'm talking to somebody who has no prior service experience. So
yeah, most definitely. And I think another part of that research too, as you're approaching a company, find out if they have veterans in the hiring chain or not. So in my two experiences where I was working with companies in their veteran hiring programs, in both cases, they were very deliberate about injecting veterans into the system. So if a veteran called up, so I worked for Quicken Loans for a little while. If a veteran called up, the initial team that fielded all of the requests, that was one of the questions. If so, they immediately diverted them to the veteran hiring team, and your next conversation was with the veteran. In the case of Roush, it's similar in that we advertise out there very easily. We hire veterans at Roush.com as a way to reach out, and that goes right into our veteran hiring team's inbox. And if one of our non-veteran recruiters is talking to a candidate and find out they served, they will tactfully kind of say, okay, I want to get you in a next conversation with our veteran team. And so that as early as possible, you have that conversation. And I think that if you find a company that's like that, I would ask the question if you're job searching, do you have veterans in your hiring team?
Yeah.
Talk to them.
No, that's a great policy. Was that in place before you started, or was that something you guys helped to enact?
So in both cases, the program was getting off the ground, and that was one of the things so when I joined Quicken, I was the third person to help grow that team, right? And so someone was in there beforehand and working with the non-military HR VP. They said, how can we do this? And so I was there to help grow that team and get more and more expertise across ranks, military specialties, services to fill out and be able to interact with the veterans better. And then in the case of Roush, it was the same deal. Had a retired sergeant major from the Michigan National Guard started the program. And then I came on board and just, continued to improve and grow on that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all that you've been doing, or you did previous. The next thing was we, talked about some common areas for transitioning out. I mean, we talked about some of them, but maybe give a perspective, common areas from transitioning out from a company side as well as from the employee side that you've seen, experienced, as being on both sides of this.
Yeah. And I think the larger the company, the more they use automated systems, right? And so the first cut can be solely based on the resume. And especially if they aren't veterans in the process, it becomes a black and white game, right? This poor recruiter that has to fill tons of requisitions has hiring managers barking on them to fill them. And there's a list. Okay, this job, this hiring manager says X, Y, and Z are required. And they look at a veteran resume. Nope, I don't see it. And they chuck it in the other pile. So that can be very tough from, if that's the company's policy to use other than person-to-person interaction for that first cut. It's very difficult. And it just goes back to as veterans, we're generally not prepared to write a resume, right? It's not our strong suit.
Right.
And then from the employee side of the house, I would say some of the difficulties that arise are at times what I saw was unrealistic expectations in terms of compensation. And this is a tricky one to talk about, right? Because you got to balance a bunch of things when you're talking compensation. It's the real world. I have a family, I have kids, I have a house. That means I have bills, right? So you got to pay the bills.
Right.
You leave in the military, you generally don't want to be unemployed. So there's that on one end. And on the other end, you've served for however long, you know what you're capable of. And so you're trying to balance, what is that worth? And I think it ties back to that discussion about finding a mentor, right? Someone that's been through this. I will be the first to say, I probably wasn't successful at it, but you learn from your mistakes and, you just move on and you figure it out. But it's a tough, very personal decision when it comes to compensation. I personally believe some of the systems that exist for transitioning soldiers don't necessarily set them up for that right first conversation. And so seek out either a company like yours that understands it or, someone that you have a personal connection to that's made that transition recently that you can have an open, honest discussion about.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Those two things, they're a challenge for the military side, but candidly, they're a challenge for anybody coming out. When you're looking at, we have been successful placing people that have applied to the job or been in one of our clients' databases that nobody bothered to look at. Because like you mentioned, the whole automation thing, they're looking for 5 keywords that if the resume doesn't have it, it gets put into the no call pile. And military resumes are notorious for that. I mean, you're not going to line up with any of that. So that could be a huge challenge. And then with compensation, it's I think the other services do it, but you remember the Army gave you that thing at the end of the year saying, hey, you're worth a whole bunch more money than that you ever got to see. So maybe that's not as accurate as it's going to be when you get out. But the thing I think that's encouraging is for folks that even if they know what to expect from a military member, it's such a value creation you get because they're going to figure it out, do really well, and get promoted faster than most. So you'll get up to kind of where you want to be.
Yeah, and that's part of that personal. It's a personal decision, and everyone's situation is different. But I would say if it's possible to eat a little bit of humble pie and take a step backwards to make sure you get into the company that you want to. What you just said is absolutely right. Get in there, as most veterans are. They're hard charging. They're going to make stuff happen, and that will be recognized in almost all cases. You will stand out, and you probably make up that difference a lot faster than you thought you would.
Pretty quickly, yeah. And the other thing, too, is that I found, and I don't know if you experienced this, is whenever I get somebody on the phone that tells me, hey, I am looking at this geographic area, right? I mean, that severely limits your potential.
For sure.
It's just the reality. And that's why Bradley Morris and some of those recruiting firms that are out there, Lucas Group, they do a phenomenal job with JMOs and even with some retirees for folks who are completely open on where they're going to go. It just opens up so many opportunities. And when they do the SACC thing, which is a Service Academy Career Conference, when you're open to go in more areas, it just gives you more opportunity. If you sit there and say, hey, I'm only looking for Detroit, right?
Yep.
Or like me, I'm only looking for Cleveland, or I was looking for New York. It severely limits opportunities that are going to be afforded to you. So,
and that plays into progression in a company too.
mm-hmm.
So it's not only your initial hire, but if you continue to raise your hand and say, hey, I've moved around however many times in the military, I don't mind moving as long as my family can go, right? I don't want a Korea scenario, but or deployment. That is value added to a company as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does Roush do well with transitioning veterans?
I think we hit on a little bit earlier. It's forced into the system that you're going to talk to a veteran. Mm-hmm. We make it pretty easy. Whether you click on our website and join our team, there's a veteran page right there that allows you to do an initial inquiry. Real easy email address. We hire veterans at Roush.com. We have a veteran, very experienced veteran that's our manager of the Veterans Initiatives Program. I think most important to any company, you've got to have executive sponsorship of a veteran hiring event. And in that case, it's our founder, Jack Roush, whose personal story, his life was saved by a retired Marine. Sergeant Major Larry Hicks was his name, just passed away recently. And so he's got a personal story behind it. So it's real. It's real for him. And then the second thing I would say is we have a series of managers that understand the value of veterans and they're actively involved. When I was running our veterans program, there was one in particular that would travel to several events with me, whether it's Fort Campbell, Fort Hood, Camp Lejeune. And in certain instances, he could do an interview with a veteran right there. And if he liked him, he would offer a job on the spot. And that word gets around pretty quick. And then pretty soon folks are starting to reach out when you come back in town. And so not every company in every situation allows that, but I think that's a couple things that we do pretty well.
Well, that's powerful. I mean, to be able to meet someone and make that call and offer them a role, I mean, especially for a young troop or soldier or Marine coming out,
right.
that can be, they're going to tell their friends, and that's great advertisement for you guys. So
for sure.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool indeed. Why do companies struggle when bringing veterans on? Why do you think, from what you've seen?
You served, and so you have a primary job in the military, but you got about 5 or 6 others. And the way I told it in one discussion I had, in fact, it was with the VP of HR for Quicken. You lay out what you did for one job, and then guess what? In 24 to 36 months, you pick it up and you have to repeat that with a new set of people in a new set of conditions. And if you stay in any amount of time, it's rinse and repeat every 24 to 36 months.
Yep.
There's no appreciation for that, I don't think, my assessment on the corporate world, because it rarely exists that way. Someone could be in a company for 20, 25 years. But how do you quantify that? How do you say, how do you not look like a knucklehead and say, I can do anything, when there's some truth to that. You put me in a situation, I'll figure it out and I'll make it happen. An HR person doesn't want to hear I can do anything, because that doesn't help them fill a requisition.
Right.
So it's,
No, that's a great point. I mean, and the thing that you have to add is, not to sound too arrogant, but most of the time we're doing that really well, right? We're going to figure it out quickly. We're going to figure out what's really important that we need to accomplish, and we're going to do it, because failure is not the option.
That's right.
And you're right. HR people, not anything against HR. I mean, I have a master's in HR, so I think I can speak somewhat negatively about them at some times.
Right.
Is that, they are looking for simple, right? A one-to-one match. Just give me somebody who can come do this job, not let me figure out how I can tailor something for them.
Right.
And I think that's awesome what Roush does, and even Quicken, is that you guys are taking some strengths from a pool of people that can add value to an organization if you understand how they can come in and make an impact.
That's right. And I think one thing that helps veterans overcome that, right, is that capitalize on what your strengths are. So, I mean, as the Army example, you enlist in the Army. Once you get through basic training, your entire career is based on leadership. Recurring schools of leadership. You're in charge of a team, you're in charge of a squad, you're in charge of a platoon, a company. So that leadership is built into the process. Yeah. And so a couple ways to translate that over into the civilian side of the house is take advantage of some of those programs that are out there that offer civilian certification. Right. We have seen in Roush great success with veterans as program managers and project managers. And it's just bringing order to chaos. So most NCOs have run a range, they've deployed, you name all the logistical nightmares you have to do. That's
Right.
project management. It's just, you got to learn the language. So the PMP is something that several organizations help soldiers get. If you can do that while you're transitioning out, that is something on the resume that any company understands what that is. There's other certifications in the same category, but find something like that that translates over. It'll help you out.
No, that's great advice. That's great advice. And then, what about some kind? I mean, is there anything that stands out for you from a standpoint of, either with Roush or Quicken, that just somebody who did it really well and it worked out really well transitioning from the military to the civilian side of things?
Yeah, we have a success story within Roush, and it was interesting because Roush made it to a certain level within the Veterans Affairs Association within Michigan, recognized as a gold level sponsor. They asked us to highlight this, and at the time, Governor Snyder actually had this individual at his state of the address and showed him off. So his case was a little unique. He had a mechanical engineering degree, had 4 years of experience as a design release engineer, and he joined the Marines as an enlisted infantryman. He served for 3 years. He's from Southeast Michigan. He knew Roush, saw that we had just barely started the program, reached out to Roush, the communication started. He was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, transitioning out, and we flew him up for the interview, showed him all around, showed him everything. He shared his expertise. It was a good match, and we hired him on as a project manager. Within 6 years, he advanced up to VP and general manager of what we call Roush Manufacturing. Now,
Wow.
Unique situation in that he had a lot of prior background and some experience before he went in the military. But the really cool thing is he bounced up through different leadership positions. When I was in the seat running our veteran program and I saw a great candidate, who do you think I sent it to? Right to him. And he built his team of project and program managers. At one point, he had every branch represented in program managers and project managers underneath him. And
That's
so
awesome.
he quickly personally knew the value of veterans in that particular role. So that's one of our success stories, I think.
That's a great story. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think we have a question here. Give me 1 second. So is there anything that, Rob, this is for you. The industry
Sure.
used to give tax cuts or more incentives for vets. Is that still a selling point for veterans right now?
So what was cool in both of my companies that I've worked with in that role, at Quicken, at the highest level, they all had ties to the military. Quicken said, I don't care what they offer. That's not why we're doing it. And they didn't even submit the paperwork for those tax cuts. And, my time's a little dated, but there were programs in place. And then I come to Roush and it's the exact same way. They're like, one, it's dealing with the government, so it's a little bureaucratic to submit it in there. But at the most basic level, Jack Roush is like, that's not why we're doing this. I don't want the tax. That's not why we're doing it. So
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome.
it might still be there. I don't know. But in the two examples, that wasn't a motivating factor.
Gotcha. Listen, is there, I really appreciate you making time for us. I want to be
Certainly.
respectful of it. Is there anything else for anybody transitioning that's listening and watching that you think would be beneficial for them that we haven't touched on or anything like that?
I would say it's tough. I've read lots of reports that sometimes it takes a job or two to settle down where you want. So it's not the end of the world if you need to, have a test run and that's your first company, right? You learn a lot through the first transition, but as much as possible, reach out to mentors or companies or organizations. There's a lot of resources out there, and it's amazing. Once you hang the uniform up, the military connection is lifelong. So when you find someone that is a veteran, it's an instant connection. So leverage that.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And that's one thing that I have found doing what I do is it's not only the academy connection and network, it's the military side of things. And I mean, look at us, right? I mean, I haven't talked to you in 30 years almost.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and reached out and said, hey, will you help me with this? And you dropped everything and said, of course. I mean, that's indicative of what the military network allows. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're transitioning, they're afraid to ask for help. So just eat a piece of humble pie, like you said about talking money.
That's right.
Apply that to this and just ask people for help. We're going to help you with it. So
most definitely,
awesome.
Most definitely.
Absolutely awesome.
And I appreciate it. I don't know how many resumes I've sent your way. Who knows where it ended up, but you never once said stop spamming me, Rob, because my sense is that you're willing to help people out, right?
Hey, whatever we can do to help out. So it's always appreciated.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate the time, man. It was great catching up. If there's anything
Certainly.
that you come up with or anything else out there, let us know. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity, and best of luck to everyone transitioning.
Thanks.
Stay safe.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Beat Navy, right?
Go Army.